Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's been concerns that some of the fares that pedicabs have been charging their customers, particularly tourists who might be in London for the first day and don't know what's going on, have been charged. We hear cases of one tourist being charged over £200 for a 1 mile journey and £600 for a 30-minute journey. What needs to be done to eliminate fare abuse? Whoever would like to answer, Chris. Yeah.
Obviously, that's totally unacceptable. In the way it should be done is there should be a fare guideline in the pedicab, and the fare should be agreed prior to the start of the journey, properly agreed. And this has been an issue which is obviously raised and must be addressed. And again, with identification, then should something like this happen, then of course there will be some sort of recourse. But at the moment, you're quite right.
Yeah. Did anyone else want to comment? Yeah. Yes.
Just to echo that, I think we've got lots of camera footage of pedicab drivers charging complete rip-off fares. Whether they're taking passengers on long routes or just deciding that they, instead of £15 halfway down the road, they've decided it's £50. And so for tourists who perhaps English isn't their first language, maybe in an area that they are unfamiliar with, that really does damage our reputation as a tourist destination. So I think it's really easy. You have set fares. There's examples of this all around the world, all around the country. You have set fares. These fares are transparent. They're there in front of you. Or it's one fare regardless of where you might be going within a certain radius. And it's as easy as that. But how do you enforce that unless we have some kind of regulation?
Yeah. Yes.
Just very briefly on that, the legislation under which pedicabs operate is that they have to charge separate and distinct fares. So we always had a system where it would be X amount per person per mile. So of course, if you're taking one person or 3 people, it's a lot more work than if you're taking one. So under the legislation, which still exists, they have to charge per person for any journey.
Is that the 1869 Metropolitan Public Carriage Act? Okay.
Yes.
So that's enforceable, is it? That if a pedicab now does not give a separate, distinct fare, then that's enforceable in the law.
That's right.
That
could be enforced.
Sorry. There's no price guide, though, is there? So they can sort of set whatever they want for the separate and distinct fares. Is that
we used to have a rule. I think was it £3 per person per mile or something?
No, it was. I think when you started, it was about £5 a person per mile. Obviously, according to inflation, now it must be about £7.50. It must be at least that. I'd say per mile per person. So in other places they have price lists, so people can see that on the bike, and it may be by destination from the town hall, whatever, to this place or that place, and they have a list so the visitors or tourists can see what they're going to be charged. But then, of course, there's always this this trader mentality. It depends on let's be honest, it can depend on the weight of the person, or there's a lot of the weather. There's lots of different factors you can take into account.
Well, one thing, just to pick up on the pricing, and you mentioning that in some cases a price list would be good. Are the pedicabs obliged under the 1869 Act to put up a price list? They're not obliged to do that. So if they don't and they just make up a price at the end, they are actually illegally allowed at the moment not to specify a price at the beginning and just charge at the end. Is that correct?
But I think I think under any sort of regulation, however it was done, there would be some guidelines which would have to be on the pedicab very clearly. So it's this amount per person per
Right, but that's something that needs to be done.
Absolutely,
It's not the
yeah.
case at the moment, which is where the problem is, particularly for tourists who, as you say, Ros, may come to London and not know English very well, so they're very vulnerable in that situation. What does TfL do? What can TfL do at the moment to make sure there isn't any fare abuse like this, £600 for a 30-minute journey? Is there anything you can do?
Not really, no, not without any appropriate legislation. I think that's the problem, and we're well aware that the people that could use pedicabs, tourists or people that've been out are vulnerable to being